The order came just before midnight. Captain Mark Reynolds listened as the radio crackled, the voice on the other end calm in a way that made his stomach tighten. Echo Company, you are to hold your current position. Do not advance. Do not retreat. Reynolds stared out across the valley below. Through his binoculars, faint fires dotted the distance. Enemy encampments stretching farther than intelligence had predicted. How long? Reynolds asked. A pause followed. Until relieved, the voice replied. The transmission ended. Reynolds lowered the radio slowly. Around him, his platoon waited, faces barely visible under the dim glow of red lights. 36 soldiers dug into a ridgeline that overlooked the only road through the valley. If the enemy took it, they would cut off 3 battalions advancing from the south. Holding the line was not symbolic. It was survival for thousands of others. Reynolds cleared his throat. Listen up. Orders are in. We hold this ridge. A murmur rippled through the men. Lieutenant Aaron Price stepped closer. Sir, that road is crawling with armor. If they push tonight, Reynolds nodded. I know. They had sandbags, trenches, and a handful of heavy weapons. What they didn't have was backup, or air support, or a clear idea of when help would come. Reynolds looked at the map again. The ridge was narrow. On either side, steep slopes dropped into darkness. Retreat would turn into a slaughter. Holding meant standing still and waiting for the storm. They worked quickly, reinforcing positions, checking ammo, setting fields of fire. No one complained. These men had been together long enough to know when words were useless. Private Lucas Grant sat with his back against a rock, clutching a photo folded so many times it was soft as cloth. His younger sister smiled out from it, missing 2 front teeth. You good? Reynolds asked, stopping beside him. Grant nodded. Yes, sir. Reynolds didn't press. Everyone had someone they carried in their pocket. The first shell hit at 12:47 a.m. It landed short, throwing dirt and fire into the air. The second struck the lower slope. The third landed close enough to knock Reynolds flat. Incoming, someone shouted, though no one needed to be told. The night turned violent. Artillery rained down, walking its way up the ridge. Trenches shook. Rocks shattered. Men pressed into the dirt, counting seconds between blasts. Then it stopped. Silence returned, broken only by ringing ears and labored breathing. Reynolds lifted his head. Movement. Figures emerged from the darkness below, dozens at first, then hundreds. They moved fast, spreading out, climbing with practiced ease. Contact front. Price shouted. Machine guns opened up, tearing through the advancing line. The enemy fell, but more replaced them immediately. They kept coming. Reynolds fired until his shoulder burned. Men shouted for ammo, for medics, for targets. The ridge became chaos lit by muzzle flashes and explosions. An RPG slammed into a bunker on the left flank. Left is down, a voice screamed. Reynolds sprinted toward it, bullets snapping past him. He found smoke, blood, and 2 wounded soldiers dragging a third. Hold here, he ordered. Don't let them through. The enemy was probing, testing, searching for weakness. They found it everywhere. After an hour, Reynolds checked the time. 1:58 a.m. No relief. He radioed command. Echo Company engaged with overwhelming force. Request immediate support. Static. He tried again. Nothing. Lieutenant Price crawled over, face streaked with sweat and dirt. We're burning ammo fast. If this keeps up, Reynolds finished the thought. We don't last. Another wave surged up the slope. Hold the line, Reynolds shouted. The words felt heavy, almost cruel, but they were all he had. Private Grant fired beside him, jaw clenched. When his rifle clicked empty, he slammed in another magazine with shaking hands. Sir, Grant yelled, they don't stop. Reynolds looked down the ridge. Bodies littered the slope, but still the enemy climbed. They don't need to, Reynolds replied. They just need us to break. The second artillery barrage began, closer this time. A blast threw Reynolds into a trench. When he looked up, Price was gone. Price, Reynolds shouted. He found him moments later, wounded but alive, pinned by debris. Sir, Price coughed, you need to pull back. Reynolds shook his head. If we pull back, they break through. Price gripped his sleeve. You can't hold forever. Reynolds met his eyes. We only need to hold long enough. Another transmission cut through the chaos. Echo Company. A new voice said, strained but urgent. This is command. Relief delayed. You must continue to hold. Reynolds stared at the radio. Continue to hold. He looked at his men. Exhausted. Bleeding. Still fighting. All right, he said quietly. Then we hold. The enemy surged again, closer now, shouting as they charged. Reynolds rose, firing, shouting orders, refusing to give ground. The ridge shook under the weight of bodies and fire. And somewhere far away, a decision had already been made. But up here, on the line, they were still standing. The ridge no longer felt like ground. It felt like a moving thing, alive with explosions and shouting, shuddering under every blast. Captain Mark Reynolds had stopped checking the time. Minutes and hours had collapsed into the same endless stretch of noise and smoke. The enemy came again, closer than before. This time, they did not rush blindly. They moved in coordinated waves, suppressing fire, pinning Echo Company down, while smaller groups climbed the slopes from both sides. "They're flanking," someone yelled. Reynolds crawled to the edge of the trench and looked down the right slope. Shadows moved fast, too fast. "Shift fire right," he ordered. "Do not let them crest." A machine gun swung around, spitting fire until it jammed. The gunner cursed, hands slick with blood that was not his. Reynolds dragged an ammo box toward him. "Clear it. Now." The gun roared back to life, mowing down the first group just as they reached the top. Bodies tumbled backward, rolling down the slope like broken dolls. But more followed. Lieutenant Price lay propped against a sandbag wall, pale but conscious. He watched the enemy push forward and shook his head slowly. "They're measuring us," Price said. "They know we're thinning out." Reynolds nodded. He felt it too. The gaps between gunshots were growing. Fewer voices answered when orders were shouted. He keyed the radio again. "Command, Echo Company is barely holding. If relief is not imminent, this line will fall." This time, the reply came faster. "Echo Company, relief is en route. You must maintain position." Reynolds laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You've been saying that for 3 hours." Silence followed. Then, quietly, "We know." That was worse. A blast hit the center trench, throwing dirt and men into the air. Reynolds hit the ground hard, ears ringing. When he pushed himself up, he saw Private Lucas Grant lying still, the photo of his sister half exposed from his vest. Reynolds crawled to him, already knowing. Grant's eyes stared at the sky, unblinking. Reynolds closed them with 2 fingers. "Medic," someone shouted. The medic shook his head. Reynolds stayed there for a second longer than he should have. Then he stood. "Everyone listen to me," he shouted over the gunfire. "They want this ridge. That means we're doing our job. Do not give them a single step." Another wave surged. The fighting turned personal. Too close for comfort. Rifles emptied, pistols barked, hands grabbed, bodies collided. Reynolds found himself face to face with an enemy soldier barely older than Grant. Fear flashed in the man's eyes before Reynolds pulled the trigger. He pushed the thought away immediately. There was no room for it. On the left flank, the line finally broke. An enemy squad crested the ridge and poured fire into Echo Company's rear positions. Chaos exploded. "Fall back to secondary trench," Price shouted. Reynolds spun toward him. "No fallback. If we collapse inward, they surround us." Price coughed, blood staining his sleeve. "Then we die here." Reynolds looked around. Half his men were wounded. Ammo was low. The enemy was everywhere. He made a decision that would follow him for the rest of his life. "Price," he said, grabbing the lieutenant's vest. "Take whoever can still move and pull back to the west spur. Set up a kill zone. Buy us time." Price stared at him. "Sir, that leaves you exposed." Reynolds nodded. "That's the point." Price hesitated, then saluted. "You better be right." "I usually am," Reynolds said, lying. As Price was dragged away, Reynolds turned to the remaining men. "We're the anchor," he said. "They get past us, the road falls. We don't let that happen." They nodded. No speeches, no heroics, just understanding. The enemy pushed hard, sensing weakness. Reynolds fired until his rifle ran dry, then switched to his pistol. A grenade landed near his feet. He kicked it downhill before it detonated, the blast throwing him against a rock. He tasted blood. The radio crackled again. "Echo Company, this is command. Air support is inbound. 10 minutes. Reynolds laughed, breathless. 10 minutes is a lifetime up here. "Can you hold?" the voice asked. Reynolds looked around at the men still standing. Fewer now. Much fewer. "Yes," he said. "We can hold." The enemy charged again, shouting, desperate to break through before dawn fully claimed the sky. Reynolds stepped out of cover, firing, drawing attention to himself. Bullets snapped past him. One tore through his shoulder, spinning him around. He stayed upright. "Come on," he shouted, rage burning through the pain. "This is the line." Behind him, his men fought like something feral, driven by exhaustion and stubborn refusal. Then, finally, the sound changed. A distant roar cut through the gunfire. Jets. The first bomb hit the valley road, lighting the night like a second sunrise. The second tore through the enemy's staging area. The third shattered their momentum completely. The enemy broke. They ran. Some dropped weapons. Others disappeared into the darkness they had climbed from. Reynolds collapsed to his knees as the firing faded. Medics arrived with the relief force minutes later, stunned by the destruction on the ridge. They moved quickly, lifting the wounded, counting the dead. Reynolds sat on a rock, staring at the horizon as dawn finally settled in, soft and indifferent. Price was carried past him on a stretcher, alive. "You held," Price said weakly. Reynolds nodded. "We did." Later, after the ridge was secured, Reynolds stood alone near the edge, looking down at the road they had protected. Convoys rolled through safely now, thousands of lives never knowing how close they had come to being cut off. A colonel approached. "You disobeyed the fallback protocol." Reynolds didn't turn. "Yes, sir. You held longer than anyone expected," the colonel continued. "Longer than we planned for." Reynolds finally faced him. Then maybe the plan was wrong. The colonel studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Maybe it was. As the sun climbed higher, Reynolds picked up Grant's photo from the ground where it had fallen. He brushed the dust from it and folded it carefully. They had held the line, but the cost was written into the earth itself, and no order would ever erase that.